This video is brought to you by Skillshare. Stick around to the end of the video to find out how you can start creating for absolutely free. Zack Snyder completely and blatantly misses the point of everything that makes Superman who he is. Now, put down your pitchforks and torches because that isn't an attack on him as a filmmaker. He isn't the only one either. Bryan Singer, Alfred Gough, and probably you also come to mind. I respect Zack Snyder for a number of things, most prominently his commitment to his vision and his ability to create stunning imagery in his films. Although, it's these two things that lead to mine and most people's biggest problem with his depiction of Superman across Man of Steel and Dawn of Justice. Out of fairness, we're not going to be talking about 2017's Justice League at all. Okay? Let's get started. Now, what I'm going to outline as the flaw in the character writing of Superman in this video is not going to be wholly unique, nor will it be simply a parroting of criticisms you've heard before. I will be attempting to expound upon existing opinions with some individual perspective I have on the character, since I, like most people, thought him to be a simple, one-note, hopelessly boring character who was so OP he couldn't possibly lend to any sort of interesting story with a true sense of tension or unease. I was wrong. I was very wrong, and if you see the character in that way, then you're wrong too. But that's okay. Let's talk about what makes Superman interesting in a way that no other character can really replicate. In Quentin Tarantino's film Kill Bill, the titular character Bill gives his perspective on Superman and how he relates to other superhero characters. In the case of Spider-Man, his true identity is Peter Parker. That's who he was born as, and he only became Spider-Man through external means. The same applies to Tony Stark as Iron Man and Barry Allen as the Flash. The only one you can kind of debate is Batman, but we can talk about that. However, Superman was born Kal-El, a being with otherworldly powers from another part of the cosmos. As he grew up, he was still this alien, and he had to try to learn how to blend in with the regular people. And it wasn't until he reached adulthood that the mild-mannered investigative journalist Clark Kent identity was created in order to suit that end. He is Superman by nature and Clark Kent by external circumstance. He is antithetical to your typical idea of a superhero, which is funny because he's the first superhero. I mentioned Batman as an exception to this rule because across all forms of media, it's pretty clear that Batman is its own persona and is the one in charge of Bruce Wayne's body more often than not, and is even seen as the true identity. For proof of this, read Batman Ego. However, he wasn't born Batman. That did come later. So Clark is still unique in this way. Next, I want to point out that Superman, despite being an alien, is one of the most human characters in all of Western fiction. He grew up on a farm, he's a baseball fan, probably the Kansas City Royals. He loves apple pie, he grew up believing in Santa Claus, with good reason, and he went to a normal school and he made friends, and most importantly, his supersuit, the most iconic and easily recognizable superhero outfit of all time, was handmade by his mother. There is nothing more grounded and humble as far as beginnings go for a superhero than that is. And it's probably my favorite detail about him. And the main reason for that is the fact that the Kents, the family that found him, took him in and raised him, are entirely responsible for who he is and why he is a hero. They're the ones that taught him that his abilities make him special, and that it's his responsibility to use his strength to help protect those who are weak. They gave him the inspiration and the encouragement he needed to become the protector of Earth. The biggest example of this is Jonathan Kent's death. It's a very pivotal moment in Clark's life, and was the final thing that pushed him in the direction he ended up in. Was Jonathan sucked up into a random tornado on some highway? No. Doesn't have to be that elaborate. You want to know what happened? He suffered a heart attack and died suddenly while Clark wasn't home. And there's a point to that, where his essentially limitless power and all of his abilities, he can't save everyone. But he still needs to save as many people as he can. Jonathan's death in Man of Steel, however, missed that entirely. Jonathan in that movie was so dead set on Clark keeping his secret from the world that he would rather die a needless death than let his son save him from dying. Even though Clark moved at supersonic speeds and there's no way in hell that anyone would have seen him, and even if they had, he's just a white kid with black hair that lives in Kansas. I highly doubt that anyone would have recognized him years later when Superman showed up. But even then, the kids from the bus knew his face and they still never revealed his identity to the public. But then he probably would have never became Superman without certain circumstances anyway, because Jonathan... whatever. In Man of Steel, the Kents are a complete departure from their original counterparts. In this movie, Jonathan tells his son that maybe he should have let dozens of children on a school bus drown to death so that he could preserve his secret. Furthermore, Martha reinforces the idea that Clark doesn't owe anything to the world, and that he could sit idly by if he so chose. So when the people that are responsible for turning him into the hero that he is think he should sit by and do nothing while people around the world suffer, where does he get his inspiration from? Here we have Jor-El, Kal's father. Now, for some reason in Man of Steel, Kryptonians aren't born, they're test tube babies. Except for Kal. Not only is he Krypton's first natural birth in centuries, he also has the genetic codex of the entire race downloaded into his body. For yet another reason of some kind. So in this version of things, rather than Jor-El sending Kal to Earth simply to protect his son, there's now implications that he could be the key to restoring Krypton as well as all of its people. And this is, in fact, what Zod plans to do. The villain's entire plan is only able to come to pass. It's only possible because of a needless change to Superman that is just one step in Zack's mission to turn him into, you guessed it, Jesus, the Christ of Nazareth. You knew it was coming. There are parallels to both God the Father and God the Son littered all throughout both of these movies in relation to the Superman character, and they're never cool, interesting, or unique. They just get old really quickly. I mean, look at this picture. And this picture. In this movie, which you probably didn't even think about, you have the man, Clark, or Jesus, who was born under unconventional circumstances, being the natural birth or the Immaculate Conception, and in him is the power to save or redeem his people, the Codex or the Blood of Salvation, and he has both a destiny and a choice to make, Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, or Clark deciding to preserve or doom Krypton and its entire future. I really don't get it. I forgot to mention the thing I even brought up Jor-El for. In this movie, for, one more some reason, he's the one that made Clark's Superman suit. And it's meant to be some sort of homage to how Kryptonian soldiers dress, because Zod and Jor-El wore something similar under their armor. But, what's with the color scheme? Why does it have a cape? And why does the S, which is supposed to be the symbol of the House of El, look different for Kal than it does for Jor? I don't know. But why is Clark getting his superhero identity from Krypton? The whole point is that Krypton had its chance and that it blew it. So, if he's supposed to be human first, Kryptonian second, then by becoming a hero, he's embracing Krypton. But then when he kills Zod and further cements that there is no future for Krypton, he's embracing Earth and his human side. He never really seems to make a definitive choice, and he definitely doesn't make an informed one. Now, the Jesus parallels that I mentioned are not exclusive to Zack Snyder, and as people on Twitter will never let me forget, he has been likened to Jesus multiple times in the comics before. You know what else has happened in the comics before? Spider-Man made a deal with the devil and erased his future daughter's existence, as well as his marriage. Tony Stark made a suit of armor that fell in love with him and tried to kill him. Nightwing cheated on his fiancée with his ex and then invited her to the wedding. Just because something is from the source material doesn't mean that it's worth adapting or even that it's good. Writers from all over the place over the last 83 years have come along and completely screwed the pooch and have misunderstood Superman on a fundamental level. Don't even get me started on Brian Michael Bendis. His physical strength isn't what makes him interesting. It's his heart and his soul. His most interesting episode in the Justice League animated series had nothing to do with his abilities and everything to do with the content of his character. It's the one where a brain parasite attaches on his body and he has his fantasy life where he lives in Kandor and he has a whole Kryptonian family and he has to say goodbye to that family, including his child, because he has to go back to the real world. It's a very touching, very emotionally moving episode. Anyway, Superman isn't boring, you just haven't seen him written at his best. In these movies, though, he's one of the most vapid protagonists I've ever seen and utterly lacks agency in almost all scenarios he's placed in. He's a very passive character, and that is not good. If the only reason he ever becomes a superhero is because his mother and the girl he likes were threatened, that's poor writing. Before the main events of the movie, he was just wandering around, maybe trying to find himself, I don't know. But I do know he was so petty as to impale a man's truck with some logs because he was embarrassed, which I guess nobody heard. When have you ever known Superman to do something like that outside of this movie? Or maybe in Superman 2 when he just decides to beat a guy up in a bar because he can? I don't get it. Why would Superman just sit around with his powers, occasionally saving people that are in his immediate area if they're in danger, but never wanting to do more or be more, and even will steal some clothes from a house he saw? Why is Superman stealing things? and at least write a note or something? Come on, man. In fact, if it weren't for Lois Lane being an active character, Clark could have stayed in hiding for the entire movie. If you don't believe me, watch it again. It's Lois's mission that takes the characters to the tundra, where they end up finding that Kryptonian wreckage that goes completely unexplained as to why that is exactly there, and then her messing around with things as how that like probe activates, and you find out Clark exists, and then all the other stuff with Zod happens. I don't know. I cannot remember for the life of me why there was a second Kryptonian aircraft on the planet Earth. Anyway, that's horrible. That's horrible. Almost as horrible as his regard for human life in these movies. Oh, let's go. One of my favorite Superman scenes, again from the Justice League series, is when he fights Brainiac Darkak in an empty city, and he gives a speech about feeling like he lives in a cardboard box and finally having a chance to cut loose. It's very, very poignant, and it definitely speaks to how Superman views the world he lives in. He treats it with care and does not want to damage it. In Man of Steel, he fights Zod in the middle of a densely populated metropolis, and over the entire time never moves to save anyone that's in danger. Never tries to take the fight somewhere that people won't get hurt, except for it's a space for 5 minutes. But then when they come back, it starts raining satellite pieces, so he really only made the situation worse. He also never tries to prevent Zod or himself from causing damage, so during this entire 25-minute final battle, people all over Metropolis are dying and suffering because of Clark's actions, while he and Zod sustain virtually no damage. So not only is this fight visually uninteresting, you can't help but think of all the people whose lives are being lost because of this boring fight. And do you want to know why you keep thinking of the people who are dying? Because Zack keeps showing them to you. You have a complete chronicle of Perry White and the rest of the people from the Daily Planet trying to get to safety and survive this chaos, but failing to. And the only person Clark ever stops to rescue throughout the entire final act is Lois. And when Zod threatens to kill a family at a bank or something, that's when Clark decides it's time to end the chaos. What about everybody else who died? I guess he just didn't think of it. Now let's talk about Dawn of Justice. In this movie, I guess in response to criticisms that Superman didn't save enough people, we have a whole montage dedicated to him saving people while politicians and other public figures discuss whether or not Superman should exist and whether or not he's like a god or devil figure, I guess. Though for some reason, the entire time he's saving people, Zack chooses to frame Superman as a Jesus figure again, once or twice in this sequence, but he gives him this look like he's pained or discomforted by what he's doing, which I still don't get. Why is rescuing people such a laborious task for Superman? If you couldn't tell, the Jesus metaphors go way further in this one, with Lex Luthor, if that's what you really want to call him, being damn near fully convinced that Superman actually is God. Like, man in the sky God. Like, thou shalt worship no other gods before me God. It's strange, to say the least. There's also the spear Batman makes to kill him, you know, piercing and making God bleed, that sort of thing. Superman giving his life to save the Earth, especially for a world that hates him and doesn't appreciate what he's doing for them. That's a parallel you can make. As well as the way that the characters stand around his dead body. There's a few other ones that I don't really feel like having to rewatch the movie to pick up on, but you get the gist of it. What does matter, though, is that one of the main plots of the movie is whether Superman should face justice or be allowed to continue to operate autonomously like he has been thus far. With most of the public seeing him as an unchecked threat, so I wonder, why does he have a statue in his honor in the middle of Metropolis that is etched to the teeth with the names of everyone who died during his battle with Zod? If the point is supposed to be that there's mixed feelings about the character, then how come we only see or hear people hating him until they need his help? Because at the end of the movie, when he dies and the entire world mourns, it comes off as one of the most unearned emotional payoffs I've ever seen in a movie, and it felt like my intelligence had been insulted. How does the entire world hate this man, and then suddenly, as soon as he dies, everyone misses him and he's a fallen hero? I don't get it. I don't understand. The worst thing he does in this movie is in the midst of all of this discourse. There's a Senate hearing he must attend at which Lex Luthor commits an act of domestic terrorism in order to frame Superman as a false hero. What does Clark do after all this? He completely bails on Metropolis and the rest of the world and goes to talk to a ghost of his dad. He doesn't save a single person in this entire part of the movie. He makes no public appearances, and for some reason, Batman really thought that their petty squabble they were having earlier in the movie was going to be enough to flush him out of his hiding. What actually does get him back in action, though? Lois Lane being in danger. Yeah. What pushes him to actually fight Batman? Martha being held hostage. For some reason, across both of these films, the only people on the planet that Clark is consistently good for rescuing are Lois Lane and Martha Kent. I promise I'm not going to talk about the Martha scene from the fight between Clark and Bruce. At least not in this video, it's not that important. But in the wake of the ultimatum given to Clark by Lex, he says, I have to go to Gotham to convince him to help me or he has to die. That is one of the most non-Superman lines of dialogue I've ever seen in my entire life. And I've seen every Superman movie ever. The fact that he even considered killing a mere mortal to protect one person is abhorrent. He goes on to say, no one stays good in this world. And at that point, I just had to reconcile the fact that I'm looking at Superman in name only. Superman's humanity, sense of righteousness, humility, relatability, regard for human life, and selflessness are all either mostly or entirely absent from this version of the character, and he is solely focused on protecting the women in his life. That's all you really ever see him do with any conviction or any sense of satisfaction in his life, is saving those two, and I don't get it. This is the Superman that was supposed to lead the Justice League? Yeah, okay. All in all, the issues with this version of Superman, it's just that he's a cynical, self-centered, apathetic superhero written and directed by someone who's more interested in framing him as a Jesus figure sometimes than having him think and behave like a human at all times, like he's supposed to. That's all. If anything, he's more like that version of Superman from the second act of Superman 3, if you've seen that movie. It's a dismal, depressing depiction of the most famous superhero of all time, and I really want Henry Cavill to get another chance playing the character under the direction of somebody who actually understands the character, and written by somebody who's just generally a better writer. Speaking of better writers, are you a creative type of person? Are you a writer looking to improve your craft? Are you a musician, editor, actor, or artist? Even yet, are you looking to get into some sort of trade? Do you have any skill that you're trying to hone and then share with the rest of the world? You're trying to share a skill? Share a skill? That's it. Today's sponsor, Skillshare. They have exactly what you need. You see, Skillshare is an online learning community for creatives where millions, and I do mean millions of people come together to take the next step in their creative journey. Skillshare offers thousands of inspiring classes for creative and curious people on topics including illustration, design, photography, video, freelancing, and even more. I literally can't... Personally myself, I've been taking Learn Adobe Premiere in 1 hour by Ruben Lauder. Let me know if it helped out with this video. I can to improve the content for you guys. However, what you might not know is that it's curated specifically for learning, meaning that there are literally no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so that you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. And it's less than 10 bucks a month with an annual subscription, but today I'm going to tell you exactly how you can get it for the price of less than $1. That's absolutely free. If you go to the link below, the first 100 people to click on it will get a free trial to Skillshare so that they can get creative and get learning how to do what they want to do immediately. Why don't you go ahead and click that link and it'll take you exactly where you need to go. I'm sure this video has already been disliked into oblivion, but if you stuck around and you actually enjoyed this video, would you consider leaving me a like? It'll help me sustain this career of mine. If you're new here, why don't you go ahead and toss me a subscribe as well. Ring the bell so that you never miss an upload. Check out the Twitch if you feel so inclined. Hang out with me live. We can talk about stuff like this more in depth if you would like to. And if you really like me, maybe buy some merch. Maybe join the channel, you know, something like that. Support the channel however you feel you can. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.